This is Scott Hunter from Smash Wrestling, and you're listening to the Pro Wrestling Post podcast.
You're listening to the Pro Wrestling Post podcast with your host, Mark Madison. This episode's guest is Scott Hunter. Visit ProWrestlingPost.com for interviews, blogs, and upcoming events in your area. You can also find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Anchor, or whatever podcast app you prefer. And now, here's your host, Mark Madison.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Post podcast, and we are joined by a very special guest, Mr. Scott Hunter. Scott, welcome. Thank you again for your time and your energy.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
So, Scott, maybe you can give those that aren't as familiar with you a little bit of background about you, your role in Smash, what is Smash. We're hoping that you can shed light on all of that and in between.
Yeah, so Smash Wrestling has been around since 2012. It's an Ontario independent promotion based, it started out being based out of Toronto, and now I don't really know if we have a home necessarily. We're kind of all over the place touring around, but primarily Toronto and London. And I do the play-by-play commentary for it, but I wear, over the years, I've worn many hats within the promotion, and now I'm kind of... on air, I'm the play-by-play commentator, and then behind the scenes, I'm also part of the management crew and have a hand in putting the shows together.
So now, how did that role evolve from play-by-play to kind of a jack of all trades, and your role within the promotion kind of grow?
Well, to be honest with you, it grew pretty organically. When I first came in, I didn't know anything about independent wrestling, and about 6 months before I started working in independent wrestling, I didn't even know it existed. I was a big fan of watching wrestling on television as a kid growing up and everything, but it never really occurred to me as to where these guys get started. And so when I kind of fell into the role, I was very naive to the business. I didn't really know the business, and I just was showing up to shows. I call the show, and then I get out of there. And then it was through, over a course of a few shows, some people started to wise me up that, maybe I should be coming a little bit earlier, helping with the setup of the shows and things like that. So as I started doing that, started paying my dues that way, I started to look at the time, the crew was very small when we first started in, and I started looking at some holes that I thought I could fill. And I just started kind of training myself on the fly. And I do have a bit of a business background in terms of my outside the world of wrestling, so I kind of applied that to what we were doing, and then over time I just kind of earned myself a seat at the table with the management crew and evolved from there.
Now, you said not until about 6 months before you started were you not even aware of really independent wrestling. What was that spark? What was that moment, that situation? Where was it that you even became aware of it? What was that like, and who was it from, maybe?
So I had a buddy of mine that was really into the independent scene. He was watching a lot of footage on YouTube and everything. That kind of every now and then he'd send me little snippets. And I guess at this time, we're going back to about early 2012. So the internet wasn't, or social media wasn't as popular as it is today at the time. But he'd send me little things over Facebook, and then and a lot of the footage he sent me was from Chikara. And then we found out that Chikara had a show in Vaughan, so him and I went to go see it. I just I fell in love with what was going on there, and then I started to look at other promotions that were regularly around the area, and then I heard this promotion called Smash Wrestling was popping up close to me, so I actually went to the first couple of shows as a fan, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the atmosphere of it, and really it's a lot more intimate than it is going to, say, a WWE event live, because you're right up close to the ring, and you're right up near the action. So I sent out an email, asked, is there anything that I can do to help out with the promotion, be it selling tickets or anything else? And there was Curtis Yantha, who was working with Smash Wrestling at that time, still with us today. He does a lot of our photographs for Instagram. He kind of got me an introduction, and I got to call a dark match as as like a tryout. And then once I called the dark match, they asked if I wanted to call that whole show. That was the first ever Canusa Classic, and then away we went. But I wasn't really expecting much out of it. When I showed up to the show, it wasn't even 100% that I was going to get the tryouts. So I really kind of fell into the gig.
How did you feel that opportunity? I mean, it came about. You put yourself out there, and there was no guarantees. But even though you're doing so, who was it that said, there's something special about Scott? We need to keep him here. He's got this energy. Who would you say would be some of your biggest supporters early on, getting you forward with Smash and independent wrestling in general?
Early on, I'd have to say that Sebastian Suave is the guy that gave me the shot in general. I think it was. I think originally it was. I mean, he very blindly. I didn't even send an audition tape or anything. I was very blindly put into the role of a tryout, and I did the tryout. I was with Dustin Perry, who now does our ring announcing at the time. It was the two of us that did the first show and called that dark match. And I remember Sebastian walked by and tapped Dustin on the shoulder and said, "How was he?" And Dustin said, "Oh, he's perfect." So that's when they asked me to call that whole show. But I think he was definitely an early supporter of mine. I'd say both Dustin and Sebastian both, in terms of I was originally hired blindly, but then as time went on and they started to really get into what we were doing, the show started to pick up more and more, and they realized that I kind of had a bit of a unique perspective on the commentary side of things on an independent level. Because I think if you go to a lot of independent wrestling, you listen to a lot of independent commentary, a lot of times commentators they're either fans, I guess everyone's a fan, but it's a lot of times they're trying to pop the boys in the back, or they're trying to pop each other on commentary, and they're not really doing a service to what's happening in the ring, when realistically, at least in my opinion, the role of commentary should be to put over the product and to put over the performers and kind of grow everyone and kind of rise the tides a little bit. So I take the role itself very seriously, and I think that that's what's kind of helped me stand out from other people.
Is there anyone that you could say you tried to patent yourself after listening to? Because you said independent wrestling, it is very different from what we tend to hear major promotions. It's not the same thing, but what did you feel, or whom did you say you kind of took elements from, whether it be on the independent level or those that you kind of listened to on major promotions, that you could say, but maybe put your own spin on it because you do take it seriously? So it's kind of a twofold question.
Yeah, I know obviously I think anybody that's around my age in their early 30s that grew up watching Jim Ross on television is going to say Jim Ross is a big influence on them. He's part of pop culture. So I think I take a lot of what he brought to the table and a lot of his influence. I was a big fan of Joey Styles back in the day, and his ability to call shows by himself. And then I take from the outside of wrestling world as well. I've always been a really big fan. I don't really get a chance to sit down and watch a lot of Toronto Blue Jay games, but I am a pretty good baseball fan. But I listen to games on the radio, and Jerry Howarth, that was calling the Blue Jay games on the radio. So I loved his ability to kind of paint a picture in your mind when you really can't see the action going on, but he just had a way of describing things. So I think that I kind of dwell upon a lot of people in the sports commentary world, and kind of, as you said, put my own spin on it.
For those that maybe aren't familiar, I guess, who could we maybe make the akin to, because we are based here out of Toronto, and comparing Jerry Howarth to in the U.S. level of sports, I'm thinking someone out of Los Angeles right now as my mind goes blank. But
I can't even think of any other names at the moment. No, yeah. But he is very silly. He's man. I can see faces and I can't think of names in my head right now. But there's a lot of I guess even football commentators and baseball commentators. They just have a way of describing the action in a way that the average fan, the average eye, isn't able to do.
Yeah, it's interesting for those that come to an independent wrestling show. They won't hear the action unless it's played back or they're watching it on on-demand service or something like that. So then you get a chance to get a different feel. So when you're there, we don't get a chance to embrace it as what you're feeling or what's going through you and your... now, would you say you're more color or play-by-play?
So I've been doing, when I first started doing it, I did color for the first about 6 months, and then we weren't thrilled with the sound that was coming out, and then we decided to flip it a little bit, because I think my background coming into Smash Wrestling was broadcasting. So I knew things in terms of ways to pitch from one thing to the next, ways to segue, ways to introduce characters, ways to introduce a story. But my strong suit, again, because I was so new to independent wrestling, wasn't the move sets of the performers in the ring, and it wasn't knowing the names of everybody or anything like that. And that was more of what the color role really is. So it didn't really suit what I was doing. So we decided to make a flip, and then, I've been doing play-by-play now for almost 8 years after getting started.
Now, you've been around it as long. Has there ever been an interest in try to flip back or get a feel for the other side of it again? Or
I have on occasion. I've called shows for a few other promotions where I've kind of taken that back seat and provided more of an analysis as opposed to the commentary. And I have a lot of fun doing that now, because I think it's my perspective on the industry 8 years later is I know everybody in the industry now, and I know all of their move sets, and a lot of them I'm friends with. So I actually, it's a lot. It comes a lot more naturally to me now, the color side of things. But I still think that my strengths play to the play-by-play side.
So getting back a little bit to Smash and its growth and evolution to where we are today, it's unfortunate we're kind of stuck in a bubble right now. But if we were to go back at least 3 months, up at least until March, where would you say the growth in Smash has been? What do you see the keys on the business side of things, on the entertainment side of things, and how its expansion has been so important to professional wrestling in Ontario and Canadian wrestling as a whole, and it as a promotion? It's kind of a layered question there.
Yeah, I think the growth in terms of the entirety of the promotion it's come in waves. And when we first broke in, our goal was to create as much buzz as possible in a short period of time, because we were brand new on the scene, and then the way you do that is you bring in the higher caliber names. So we really built our foundation off the backs of names like Johnny Gargano and Chris Hero. We brought in AJ Styles, and I think that through that we were able to create a reputation for ourselves. And over time, the other promotions around us as well have also grown, and they've also improved immensely. And I think through that, it's a constantly evolving business that we're in. So then our next wave kind of came in the form of our angles and our storylines. That's when we started to create this storyline with a faction we called Fourth Gun that consisted of Johnny Gargano and Drew Gulak, Biff Busick, and Tarek. And we had a year-long build to this storyline of this Fourth Gun group versus Smash Wrestling. And then maybe 2-3 months before the conclusion of the story, NXT came calling and swooped up 3 of the 4 members of Fourth Gun. And from there it was, okay, let's hit that reset button. And Tyson Dukes, who's worked with us since the beginning as well, started his own wrestling school. And through his wrestling school, that kind of gave us our next wave of new talent coming out of London, Ontario. And we've dwelled from Wrestlers Anonymous out of Buffalo as well, and that's brought us in the likes of Kevin Bennett, who's the current champion right now, and Puff and Daniel Garcia and Kevin Blackwood. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a constant evolving promotion. But I think in terms of growth outside of the ring and outside the entertainment side of things, on the business side of things, the biggest growth has come. We started out inside of a place called the E-Zone in Toronto, which is just a small little arcade, and it was so small, like my commentary table, it was literally an air hockey table that we were sitting at, and we were able just to go out there and find those larger venues because the fan base demanded it. We tried to cram, I think we crammed about 700-800 people into that small venue when AJ Styles came to town. Yeah. And it was just, we outgrew where we were. And it was able to we found the Franklin Horner Community Center, which is just a gymnasium. We were there for a few years, and then we ended up getting the TV deal with the Fight Network, and through there we were able to expand more, started expanding beyond Toronto. We ended up getting venues, places like the London Music Hall in London, Ontario, Phoenix Concert Theatre in Toronto, We expanded to places like Kitchener, which is where I'm from. We've been able to get out and do shows in Montreal and now out east. And I think the growth of the company just comes from expansion and being able to not settle for where we're at and constantly be thinking of the bigger picture and what's next.
Are you looking for the newest and hottest in the world of pro wrestling? Then check out the amazing action on Powerslam.tv, the biggest indie pro wrestling channel in the world. Get over 6,000 hours of the best events from over 150 of your favorite promotions from 20 different countries around the globe. Brands like Progress Wrestling, Evolve Wrestling, Combat Zone, Defy, PCW Ultra, PWX, Over the Top, Shine, and hundreds of others with fresh content added every day for only $5.99 per month. Get your free trial today at Powerslam.tv.
One of the most interesting things, I think, as a fan, I can easily say that I'm a fan of Smash Wrestling because I enjoy the product and watching and being a part of the environment and seeing how everyone's involved with it. You've talked about bringing in different talent that is notable, but there's also been relationships built with other promotions. Maybe you can speak to that and how some of those relationships have come about in Smash working with some pretty notable companies.
Yeah, I think that it has played a massive role into getting our name out there on a larger scale. And it just came through. I mean, Sebastian, he deserves all the credit for putting all those shows together in terms of those joint shows with other promotions we've been able to do. I mean, very early on, we were doing joint shows with Chikara, with CZW, and with Progress out of the UK. And I think off the back of that, we started to build a rapport with other promoters who started to, kind of pass us on to the contacts that they had. And then really the large scale came when we were able to, first we did a joint show with Impact Wrestling in London last year. And that we piggybacked off that to SummerSlam week last year when SummerSlam came to Toronto. And we just reached out and because we have dreams of expanding our brand beyond Canada. So the first way to do that is to create those relationships. So we bring in those promotions from outside of Canada to us that we have. So we brought in Progress. We brought in WXW out of Germany, OWE out of China. And we were able to just create this entire week of professional wrestling. And realistically, it's a SummerSlam week, but it was put on really by kind of us as the central hub.
And to be a part of that was pretty taxing, but rewarding, I'm sure, at the same time.
Yes, yeah, it was. That was, I think, my first real taste of what a lot of these guys go through in terms of a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were doing 2 shows a day for 5 straight days. So by the end of it, my voice is shot. You're up for 20 hours a day. And it was taxing, and it was really hard. It's unfortunate because I found towards the end of the week, I was having a hard time enjoying it in the moment because you're just so tired.
Mm-hmm.
But in hindsight, when you go back and you look back and you look at what was accomplished in that week, and it's hard not to say that I loved every second of it. It was just in the moment you feel a little tired, but it's very rewarding looking back and seeing what we were able to accomplish and how much we were able to do in such a short period of time.
Wonderful about the names that have come through and the relationships that have been built. Has those relationships, even if they've gone on to other things, have you been able to maintain them? Has there still been those connections? Because for those who didn't see, Sebastian himself was part of SummerSlam weekend, and there were some really notable Smash talent that were a part of it as well. Have those been built still or maintained?
Well, I think at any time the relationships are always maintained, and we have just a great network of performers that have worked for us in the past, used to be regulars for ours that have now gone on to greener pastures. So you have those talents that are in these other promotions now that are helping spread our name, and it's also really cool to see people that you kind of worked alongside that are now doing this on a much larger scale, and you see them on NXT, on AEW, in Ring of Honor, and I think that it's you build relationships from there. But I think in terms of the the opportunity that Sebastian and Carter Mason were able to get being on Monday Night Raw there around that SummerSlam time as well. That's anytime WWE comes to town, they reach out to the independent promotions in the area and have you send a couple guys, and a lot of times they usually end up just in catering in case they're needed. And every now and then an opportunity comes along, so I think that was that opportunity there came to them. I think it was a lot of right place, right time. But yeah, you like to build those relationships, and we got a lot of great people we've worked with that really enjoy what we're doing, and they help spread the word for us for sure.
Are you looking for the newest and hottest in the world of pro wrestling? Then check out the amazing action on Powerslam.tv, the biggest indie pro wrestling channel in the world. Get over 6,000 hours of the best events from over 150 of your favorite promotions from 20 different countries around the globe. Brands like Progress Wrestling, Evolve Wrestling, Combat Zone, Defy, PCW Ultra, PWX, Over the Top, Shine, and hundreds of others with fresh content added every day for only $5.99 per month. Get your free trial today at Powerslam.tv.
Now, things did slow down a little bit for Smash. It was pretty taxing up until that point. The SummerSlam weekend was wonderful, though, for anybody that was a part of those series of shows. But what happened, would you say, between, say, September of 2019 till about February 2020 with the promotion? Where was the outlook, or what were the plans in moving forward with the company?
Well, I think realistically, one of those, it was at a stage where we needed a break in terms of not just a promotion, but like just as people. That week was so taxing on a lot of us that we kind of had to look at ourselves afterwards and be like, this is, as far as it was, it's just not sustainable on an independent level to be going kind of balls out that much over in such a short period of time. And I think that, realistically, we all have day jobs outside of this, and I think it was a chance for us to kind of hit that reset button a little bit, because it was taxing not just on the staff but on the performers as well. And it was kind of it was an enjoyable break, to be honest with you. I think everybody had a chance to kind of get settled, get their minds right. And I think when we came back, it's, unfortunately this pandemic hit kind of right as we were ramping into the comeback there. We only got, I think, 1 or 2 shows back, and then things died off. But I think we were coming towards, it was at the end of a very long summer. It wasn't just that week, it was the summer in general. We were doing a lot of shows in a lot of different towns. And it's not a full-time job for any of us. So we're navigating, how do you sustain doing that many shows and keep a day job and keep a personal life and all that. So I think there's a lot of juggling that was done there at the time that we just realized it wasn't sustainable. So took that break for ourselves, and then coming into early 2020 is when we kind of said, okay, so this is the plan kind of moving forward, and we've got a different approach to what we're doing to make it more sustainable, to make it less taxing and less stressful, both financially for the company and for all of us mentally.
One of the things you had shared is there's a deal that has been struck and worked out with Fight Network, which is fantastic. But has there been content still available if fans wanted to watch, if they're subscribing to the Fight Network or Smash's on-demand service, which is always accessible, but would they be able to access past content up until this point, at least, on Fight Network?
I don't know that they're able to do it on the Fight Network in general, but what we've been doing, especially over this kind of lockdown period, is we've been putting a lot of our content, making a lot of it available on YouTube as well for free. So Smash On Demand and YouTube right now are probably the 2 best outlets to go if you want to see old content of Smash Wrestling. And we've been trying to come up with some creative ways to reuse old content. I did some sit-down interviews with some members on the roster as we look back and watch back one of their matches while they talk about their perspective on it. Those have been a lot of fun to do for me personally, because it's giving me a different insight as to a match that I called, and kind of seeing it from the perspective of the people that are in it. So it's one thing to hear me call a match that they're performing in, but it's another thing to hear how the story played out in their minds. So that's been a lot of fun.
Now, we've seen Smash grow. You've grown as a commentator. You've called several matches, countless. I can't remember how many, over the course of 8 years, I'm sure yourself. Which ones would you say stand out, being there, were the most special? The ones there's always discussion and preparation beforehand, but then execution, that stand out to you, and why?
There's a few that stand out to me for very different reasons. I know, like, I keep going back to the AJ Styles Chris Hero match that main evented Super Showdown. No, it wasn't Super Showdown. It was Any Given Sunday, I believe. This is one of the early shows, but
this was at E-Zone, right?
Yeah, it was. Yes, it was the E-Zone.
Okay.
So, and this was the third show that I'd ever called. So I was still so green in the business, and that one stands out to me as an incredible opportunity. And I think, given where I was at the time, it impressed a lot of people what I was able to do with it. But it's one that I'd like to have back now in hindsight, because I think I could do a much better job if I had that opportunity again. So that one stands out to me for that reason. But then we've had matches like Chris Hero, Samoa Joe. Was a great match for us. That one stands out because I think that was one of the first opportunities for me to call someone that I've kind of seen on TV, and now I'm meeting in person. So that was a lot of fun. Sebastian Schwab versus Tarek in a last man standing match. That match is probably the best match I've ever called, just in terms of the story leading up to it, the story they told over the course of the match, and the fact that it's just two best friends going out there and knowing that they were going to crush it, and they did. And then I have a lot of fun calling anything that Psycho Mike's in as well. I think he's a different cat in terms of the way he likes to tell a story in the ring. He does it from a comedic side, but he's very serious about what he's doing as well. And I think he and I kind of bond a little bit over I kind of understand his logic behind what he's doing. And I think my commentary on his matches, I'm able to kind of help him sell the story that he's telling on commentary, because I understand the story that he's trying to do. I had the opportunity to call a match of his with a joint Impact show with Josh Matthews, and that was a cool opportunity for me in general, because that was kind of a sign to me that okay, maybe I'm doing a little bit better at this than I thought I was. But calling a match with Josh Matthews, and Josh Matthews having a look at Psycho Mike for the first time, I don't think he got it. So it was kind of on me to kind of help put that character and put that story over. So I have a lot of fun doing that with certain performers as well.
Maybe you could give us a little more insight about Psycho Mike for those that aren't as familiar with him. Fun character, super talented, incredibly underrated would be some words to describe him. How would you best describe him, personally, professionally?
Personally, he's a tough guy to read, to be honest with you. He's one of those guys where it's hard to tell if you're on his good side or his bad side unless he explicitly says it to you. But professionally, man, he has just one of the coolest minds that I've ever met in the business. And it's, like I said, he does things from a comedy aspect, but he takes it very seriously. So a lot of times he and I will sit down as we're going over a story or a match that he's doing, and he and I are both trying to find the logic in the comedy of because he doesn't want to do it just to be funny. He wants to do it to tell it, so it can help tell a story within the context of the match. And I think that it's just such a creative mind, and I think it often goes unnoticed, because I think people are spending so much time just enjoying the comedy of the match that they don't really see all the nuances that went into it. And that's a testament to the way his brain works, because I think it's one of those, the things that he does, you don't notice it when it's happening, but you would sure notice it if it wasn't happening. And it would stand out in a bad way. So I think to his credit, he just has an amazing mind for telling a story.
From all the talent that you've seen come through, what's the highest praise you've received from anybody that's heard you call a match?
To be honest, I haven't really received a whole lot of feedback from people in the industry, be it good or bad. And I think that is, I take that as a good sign, because I think that kind of means it's not in my mind, it's not my position to get myself over. It's my position to get everybody else over. So as long as people are talking about Smash Wrestling, I take that as a credit to what I'm doing. But I have had people like, there was a show I called for ESW, and Allie, who's now in AEW, heard the show after the fact and came and talked to me. She says, I've never actually heard your commentary before, but she really enjoyed it. And I think that it is a thankless role. And I say that as I think that's a good sign. I think that, especially nowadays in the era of Twitter, where it'd be so easy for people to rip apart the job, and a lot of times in the bigger promotions, people do rip apart. The fact that I've never experienced that side of it either, that it's kind of more of a neutral take on what I do, as it should be. I think I'm a background character for professional wrestling, much like, say, a referee would be. I shouldn't be the focal point of what's going on. And as long as people are enjoying Smash Wrestling and they're enjoying the product in the ring, then I'm doing my job.
Fantastic. Very well said. Before we let you go, there is a little bit of a game that I think I was maybe giving a bit of a prelude to it beforehand that we like to play here on the Pro Wrestling Post podcast. Are you up for it?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the game is called Wrestling Tinder. And much like regular Tinder, if you're interested in the topic, we will swipe right. If you're not interested, we will swipe left, and I have to kind of think as quickly as I can on my feet and readjust.
All right.
Okay. We are going to get a little deeper with this because the game are some pretty important issues that have come about over the last few months. And if you're game for talking about them and your perspective on it, because you can see it from a management point of view, you can see it from a performer's and a personal point of view, if you're game for them.
Let's do it.
Okay. Speaking out.
I'll swipe right on that.
Go for it.
I think that it's the movement in general has caused a cosmic shift within the business for the better. I think that it's exposed a little bit of a seedy underbelly of the business in a way, but I think that it's exposed something that had to be brought up and had to be talked about, and I think that all these women, all these performers and fans that have come out with their stories have kind of gained strength from each other telling stories, and there's strength in numbers. There really is, and it causes like I said, a shift and a change for the better. And I think that that's one of the good things that's come out of this lockdown pandemic era of wrestling that we're in, is that it's caused the world to hit this real reset button. And I think a lot of people have realized, like, the cliche is, well, when things get back to normal. And I think people are starting to realize normal wasn't all that great. Like, why would we go back to normal when we can move forward to better? And I think that that's what this Speaking Out movement has done. Is it's called out things that have had to be called out. It's called out people that have to be called out, and now it's up to the promotions and management to follow through and ensure that the safety, integrity, and respect of the performers and the fans and their own brand is upheld.
Fantastic. Another one that's important, because we're talking not just about performers, we're talking about people. Black Lives Matter.
I'll swipe right on that one as well.
Go for it.
And I think that also kind of piggybacks off of what I was saying with this whole reset, that it's not just the wrestling world that's hit the reset button. Quite frankly, it's the world that's hit this reset button. And I think a lot of people were sitting at home and realizing that, like I said, that normal could be better. And I think that, again, by enforcing these changes and by speaking out about these injustices going on, that we're able to kind of pull together and make things better moving forward. And I think a lot of this is the people are taking their power back because they've had the chance to stop their everyday lives and just sit and look at the big picture. And a lot of times it's we're all so caught up in what we do daily that we're not thinking about, the big problems and the big reasons. And this pandemic has allowed people to sit down and think about that. And I think it's so important that we all just respect and love each other as people, regardless of race, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of anything that divides us. I mean, really, at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all going to be the same 6 feet under when all said and done.
Exactly. I mean, we're all the same on the inside, and yet people want to categorize or group or judge, and it really no one comes out in the better for it. Actually, popular saying is, for everyone that's got a finger pointing at somebody else, you have 3 or 4 pointing right back at you. So, what are you doing to make that change?
That's it.
Now, a recent hashtag has begun trending, actually, as of us recording this, about Sign Eddie Kingston. My question to you is, should there be a hashtag trending titled Sign Tyson Dukes?
Oh, I think that's way overdue for a Sign Tyson Dukes hashtag. He is one of, hands down, the best in-ring performers that this country has, if not the best. He's been doing this for a very long time, and now he's shifted his focus to, and I think, to be honest with you, Mark, I think at one point that was his dream, and I know it was, and that was his focus. And I think now he's at a stage of his career where he's looking towards the future and looking to taking upon that training aspect, that training role. So, and kind of building that next wave. So I think now he's able to kind of live vicariously through a lot of his students, but he still has a lot left in the tank himself. I think it got real close back when he was in that Cruiserweight Classic, and unfortunately he was, and a lot of us are, victims to the border, and that's really what kind of put a little bit of a kibosh on him, and it's just the way the United States views how their jobs should be kept. And I think that's the main thing I don't think a lot of people realize, is that so the border coming into Canada, professional wrestling is considered a performance art.
Right.
When it's considered a performance art, you don't need a working visa to do it, because it's not considered you're making a living off of doing this. It's just a hobby versus in the United States, professional wrestling is considered a combat sport, which means that it's considered a job, which means that you need to have a working visa to do it. So to do it legally, when you are not an American citizen, because otherwise they view it as you are taking a job away from an American. And that's kind of what happened to Tyson at that point, was he hit the wrong border officer on the wrong day that decided American needed that job more than he did, and he didn't have that visa yet. So I think that he is long overdue to be seen on a world stage, and I think that it's criminal that it hasn't happened for him yet.
One of those people that he's living vicariously through would be his son.
Yes. Yeah. Ethan's done a couple of dark matches for us as well, and he's so young. I think he's like 16 years old. Like, he's such a young kid, but man, he's going to be good. A lot of the students coming out of that Wrestle Factory have a lot of potential, and the future is bright for Ontario wrestling for sure.
And the last of our topics, if you're up for it, he is Scott Hunter on Facebook in quarantine. Maybe you can explain that to everybody.
Yeah,
you think I was going to let that one go? Probably not.
that was my quarantine life was very, very different, and I had a hard time early adjusting to it. I work a full-time job, and I work full-time with Smash. So I went from working about 60 hours a week to 0. And I am not one to stop moving. And the forced break was very much a shock to my system. So I had to find something to do to occupy my time with. So I started just making stupid videos around my apartment. And originally I was making these videos just having fun, telling jokes and stuff. And I originally started doing them as a way to pass the time, give myself something to do, keep my sanity. And then as a few days went on, and I realized that it was building these connections for me of people that I haven't talked to in years who were commenting on it, people from my high school, people from college, people that I used to work with. And it was really kind of therapeutic for me to be able to, even if it's just, small chit-chat and conversation, you're still able to have those moments with these people in a time where social interaction was limited. And then I started to realize that these videos that I was making weren't just for me anymore, and it was for everybody else, because it was giving them a sense of consistency in an inconsistent world, and it gave them something to look for every day. So, and as time went on, it ended up being, I thought it was going to be a couple of weeks. It ended up being 3 months that I was doing it. And to be honest, some days the video was my reason to get out of bed. I love that about it, because it gave me a reason to wake up, a reason to hop in the shower today, a reason to put clothes on today, a reason to look presentable on camera today. And I found my days got more productive just because I was forced to get up and do something first. And those are really, like, as stupid and as funny as they were, that was really my way to getting through 83 days of isolation.
Fantastic. And you made it. You're out here on the other side. They let you out.
They let me know. Yeah.
So before we let you go, Scott, is there anything you'd like to share with listeners, wrestling fans, independent wrestling fans, before we let you go?
You know what? I wish I had a bunch of things to plug right now, and I really don't. Just because there's no one's doing shows right now. I do have Backyard Pro Wrestling is coming out with season 2. That I believe I'm going to be doing a little bit of commentary for. I don't think I'm breaking any news on that. But yeah, Backyard Pro Wrestling, check that out. That's on YouTube, absolutely free. They did a 2-part show, and I did some commentary for that already, which has been a lot of fun to do in quarantine, because that's just having fun with pro wrestling. It's fun to not have to take things seriously all the time with that. Other than that, I mean, if you go back on my Facebook page, you can look up all those quarantine videos, or you can check out, I also did a promo contest using a lot of different independent wrestlers in the area. It's now concluded, but you can go check those out. But that's really all I got going on right now.
Fantastic, though. Thank you. And if anybody does want to check out Smash Wrestling and the on-demand or YouTube service, where can they go for that?
So Smash Wrestling, you can follow us, go to our website, smash-wrestling.com. There should be a link there for on-demand as well, which is a paid service. Or if you just go onto YouTube, search Smash Wrestling, you should be able to find all of our footage there as well. And I guess, for any upcoming information of when shows might be coming back, you can follow our Instagram at Smash Wrestling, or you can follow mine at as Hunter Smash, or some people just call it Shunter Smash. But there's any upcoming info that we have in terms of future dates coming up, as you can find it on our Facebook or our Instagram.
Fantastic. On behalf of Smash Wrestling's Scott Hunter, this is Mark Madison for the Pro Wrestling Post podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pro Wrestling Post podcast with your host, Mark Madison. Once again, please visit ProWrestlingPost.com for interviews, blogs, and upcoming events in your area. And be sure to download the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Anchor, or whatever podcast app you prefer.